Boom, waka waka. We're good to go, man. Let me
Awesome.
stop the share and just make this about us. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do
That
that.
sounds good.
So, all right, I'm good to go, Randy. I know what I'm doing now.
Great.
What's next? Hey, everybody. I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a LinkedIn strategist. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting, but I absolutely love helping people figure out how to navigate their career transition, their job search. So I had a conversation, almost half a year ago with my good buddy, Mr. Randy Wooden, the guy in the bright red. And Randy and I decided we wanted to put this show together for you. So, Randy, introduce yourself. Do you want me to do housekeeping, or you want to do it?
Why don't you do housekeeping and then turn it to me, and I'll do my thing.
Cool. Housekeeping. Hey, everybody, use the chat box. The easiest way to bring up any question, any thought, any idea you want to share is to drop it in the chat box. And I'll bring it up for either Randy or Noel to address, because we want this to be engaging. So use the chat box and join us. Randy, take it over.
Yeah. And again, if you have those questions, feel free to chat them in there. We also like to know where people are watching us from. What city, what country, what galaxy, or whatever. Just let us know where you're watching from. But Randy Wooden reporting live from today, Goodwill's corporate on University Parkway in Winston. You can see in the background, I work for the professional center right there. And normally I've been at home, but they let me in here for good behavior. And anyway, I run our professional center. We help job hunters, as you might expect, professionals all across the country, actually, but mostly here in the Triad. A lot of things that we do, it's all free. So find us on LinkedIn, find Teddy, find me. We both help job hunters. We're happy to try to help you wherever you may be geographically. These are tough times for a lot of folks. And one of the reasons that we started this show back in April was to provide some information, have a little fun along the way. And we've both been fortunate that this thing still has legs. In fact, we have, booked up through the end of the year, I think. So we also have a sponsor. And so who would have thought that back in April, right, Teddy?
Yeah. And we're really fortunate that Brookmead Holdings decided to partner with us. And the sponsorship is really trying to find the needed revenue to help us grow this for you.
Yeah, that's really the main thing. So we love what we do. We do it every Wednesday. It's live. If you know people that might want to take part, feel free. Let them know about it. If you've got topics that you'd like to have covered, or you know of people that could bring their skills and expertise in as a special guest, then we'd love to have that as well. So let me introduce Noel Dibona right now. Noel, I got to know of you maybe a year or so ago, I think, something like that.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yep. And as you'll detect from his accent, he and I are both Red Sox fans and Patriots too, I hope.
Oh, yes.
Celtics, Bruins, the whole deal, right? So
the whole deal.
All right. So you guys, now that we got that out of the way, anyway, Noel is a consultant and he's been in business for many years. And the grab here for me, the understanding of how we can decode our behaviors to help us do a better job with interviewing, also to play better with others. How do we interact with our coworkers? And so Noel's here to talk about that in some detail, but also the second half of our show, Teddy and I took an assessment, the very assessment that Noel gives to large corporations and mid-sized corporations. So he's going to decode us. I know that's scary, but he's going to do that, Teddy. And beyond that, he's going to guide and kind of coach us a little bit based on those results in how we might better be able to work together and play together. So
you promised me I wasn't going to get embarrassed.
No worries, Teddy. We're going to keep this very positive and you're going to love it.
So let me turn it over to Noel. And Noel, if you would, just your background, sort of the why behind what you're doing. Help us out. Who's Noel?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank both Randy and Teddy for having me on the show today. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to talking about this. These are topics that are near and dear to my heart, and I've used for numbers of years, actually many years. I began my career as a chemical engineer funny enough. And I worked for companies like General Foods, and then I worked for Clorox company. I worked in the design fields, and then I went into production operations management. And even in those early years, how I get into all of this is that I was always disappointed about working on teams. I felt that there was a little bit too much red tape, a little bit too much bureaucracy, and not enough action. Well, I left corporate life after just a short 4 or 5 years, and I went into the military, which I always wanted to do to begin with. But coming from a middle-class background, I was lured into making a lot more money as a chemical engineer. So that's what I did. But I went into the military, actually went into the special operations community and learned a lot about high-performance teams. From that 6 years of experience in the military and coming out on the back end of that, back into the corporate life, I've always worked with teams. I've been members of great performing teams and not such good teams. And the difference is astonishing. And so it's my mission to help other companies and other individuals be the best that they can possibly be by working in teams and working with each other, and really just getting down to the basics of how to operate as a team. And so I've had some folks that I've worked with over the last several months that are looking for work, and I've adapted some of this to the job search, and also adapted some of it to how people get along with each other as coworkers in the work environment. And so I'm looking forward to talk about that today.
Yeah, and so this is not just in the workplace, but this is also how we can better know ourselves and interact with people outside of the workplace too.
Absolutely. It helps with all kinds of relationships, spouses and children and in-laws, whatever the case may be.
In-laws and outlaws, right?
There you go.
All right, so let's get started. You gave us some topics that you'd like to cover, and self-awareness, a high level of self-awareness. You think that is the strongest predictor of overall success. So when you talk about this self-awareness, it's all dealing with people. But when you talk about self-awareness, how do we define that? Because we hear that term, what does that mean? And how can we measure that? Help us out with that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So essentially what we're talking about is we're talking about our own individual psyche, our own personality traits, drives. What drives us as people? Do we get energized when we talk with other people? Do we have a drive and then a need to associate with others? Are we happy not having those types of relationships and being more reserved, let's say? And so what self-awareness is really being aware of the things that make you tick, both in a positive way, your strengths, but also your blind spots. And, you know, Randy, I've been lucky over the years in the companies that I've worked for. I've gone through numerous different types of executive courses and different types of exercises to allow oneself to get in touch with who you are as a person and your feelings and all of those things. And until I really did those, and I've done them on several occasions, I really didn't know myself that well. However, once you begin to take on an understanding that goes beyond just the superficial, your ability to relate to others vastly improves. Your ability to read others vastly improves. And I can't imagine going into business deals like I have over the years without that knowledge right now. I would feel kind of bare and not well positioned to take on those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, this whole reading people, that to me is fascinating. And I think what I know about that, I could put in a thimble. So I'm really excited to hear more about how do we read other people? It's almost like Larry Bird, again, Celtics, right? So we'll go there. Wayne Gretzky, same way in hockey. They could see the play develop before other people, almost as though the game is in slow motion. They could see and read things that other people couldn't see, or maybe they could see it, but they couldn't process it in real time enough to act on it. And so to me, that's always been fascinating. We talk about reading people. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I want to talk about here to kind of go through that. And basically, we're going to talk about 4 factors today.
Yeah.
The first one is dominance. And that is about the drive. Okay. We're talking about drives, and drives is what creates behavior. So if somebody has a drive to exert their influence over people or events, they're going to have a very high drive toward being dominant. If, on the other hand, they're not going to be that type of dominant person, then they're going to be more open to being influenced by others. So you can imagine a situation where you have the opposites in that continuum of dominance, and how that might set up some tension between people. The other 3 things that we're going to talk about today, there's 4 factors. The other 3 factors is extraversion. Are you very extroverted and like to be with people and enjoy the social interaction? Which those types of individuals obviously are having a great deal of difficulty being in the remote environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, of course, those that are more reserved, that really do not need that fulfillment from that interaction with other people. The third one is patience. And does that mean that I want to be very stable and very disciplined in what I do? So if I'm high in that patience, high in that stability factor, I'm not good at multitasking. So impatient people like myself will want to do many different things and kind of get an adrenaline rush off that. Whereas those that are more patient and highly in high stability, that just drives them crazy, and they feel like the spaceship is coming out of control. The last one is formality, and the drive to conform to rules and structure. And so it's a combination of these 4 things that puts you in one of 4 different groups. And we have 17 different definitions or profiles, if you will, for the different types of personalities.
Let me just jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
We talk about this assessment and all these 17. Who founded this? How was this brought about? How they, you didn't draw up a play in the dirt and go, hey, I've got 17 of these things. Where did this originate?
Yeah, this originated with a company by the name of the Predictive Index out of the Boston area.
Mm-hmm.
And how it developed was in the mid-50s. And it was a way for executives to become more sensitive toward the needs of their people. And over those years, up until current times, there are over 20 million sets of data in this tool, or this instrument. So it's extremely accurate. And there's a lot of statistical analysis that's been done on it to be verified and validated. Those 17 different types of personalities fall into 4 different groups. Analytical, so I'm a very analytical person.
Mm-hmm.
Social, that's another type of characteristic or another type of grouping. People that are high in the extroversion scale fall into that subset of social. Then you've got your stabilizers that are really into process and making sure that things A through Z get done and you don't jump around and they go crazy on that. And then those that are the most persistent, their characteristics of being highly persistent. And those are the 4 subcategories that we use. But really, I want to stress that although this is statistically validated, it is something that is positive for everybody. It is not a situation where you're trying to figure out the not so good things or the blind spots or the issues that people have. It's more around the strengths. And where I come at this is helping people understand those strengths and how to make the most out of those strengths, particularly if you're looking at the dynamics of a team environment.
Yeah. And I think if I could just jump in here, I think, Noel, and forgive me if I'm misspeaking here, you're going to provide a link for people if they wanted to do the assessment. you don't need to give it right now, but I just wanted to get people ready because they're hearing this and they're going, hey,
Yeah.
I want to get in on this thing, especially if it's not going to cost an arm and a leg. And I think you've got is it a free assessment? It may be a shorter version of it.
It is.
But
it is.
maybe we can get that and put that in the notes field. And also afterward, Teddy can put it in the notes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat if that's okay.
That's good. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and just put that link in the chat. And anybody that's listening, if they feel that they would like to do this, certainly they will get a full report on their characteristics and particularly how it relates to the work environment. But as Randy mentioned earlier, it can be related to all kinds of different relationships, any relationship.
So no, just a quick sideline in some respects. There's lots of assessment tools out there. Can you speak high level? Dean's asking this question.
Sure.
High level, what's the difference between this predictive assessment tool and a Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. A Myers-Briggs is a lot more detailed to the intrinsic personality traits that a person has, whereas this particular instrument is calibrated toward the workplace. And in fact, this particular instrument will show how a respondent, what their particular traits are. But interesting, it also identifies their attitudes and perceptions of the person that they think they need to be at the workplace, which is very interesting. So sometimes you'll get somebody that has a natural style to be a very analytical person, but they're in a sales environment or a social environment, and they will end up reflecting that by virtue of the way that their profile is actually graphed out on paper when they're projecting themselves in the workplace as to how they believe they need to behave. It's very, very interesting. So that really is the biggest difference.
Interesting. So that there's I guess what I would call the natural Teddy, and then the Teddy that Teddy feels he needs to be to perform his job. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Said well, and we're going to show that for both of you folks a little bit later in the in this show.
Get ready.
Randy, I'm Teddy 24/7. I never alter myself.
Yeah, I got you. We'll see. All right. No, what's next? What you got?
Okay, so we went over the 4 different factors. We went through the different subcategories, and so I would like to talk a little bit about decoding behaviors when you're on an interview, right?
Absolutely.
Is that okay to go to that?
Yeah, please do. Because, and I'll tell you, our audience is a mix of job hunter and professionals who just really want to learn more about different things, including decoding behaviors. So this audience is diverse. And again, whether you're interviewing or whether you're going through everyday life or you're on the job, all of this stuff is applicable. But yeah, let's talk interviewing. I
don't want to freak you out or anything, Noel, but there's 32,000 people listening to you right now, including some dude named Thomas who may be related to.
I love it. I'm glad that everybody's here, and I'm especially glad that Thomas is there. So that's great. Hello, Thomas. Okay, so let's talk about interviews. And I think this is really, really important for people to understand. And frankly speaking, most of the people that are on this call, particularly those that have done a lot of interviewing over the years, I think this will resonate with them. And it's not anything that is crazy or way out there. It's basic information. And I think it's just really important to be reminded about these things from time to time because it's easy to forget. Now, the first thing I want to point out about taking an interview and understanding your behavioral style is recognizing that you're going to be a little bit under a certain amount of stress, a little bit more stress than you would be if you were kicking around the house or talking to a friend. Fair?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely. So you have to acknowledge that. And what you have to realize is that if you have a particular trait, let's say that you're very extroverted, and now you've got a little stress that you're under, you're going to come across even more extreme and be more extroverted. Now, the problem with that, of course, is, it's not a problem if the interviewer thinks that you're just a very friendly person. But if that person happens to be very analytical and very reserved, opposite of you on the extroversion scale, then that person's going to be a little bit put out, not going to like it. It's going to say, you know what, this person might be a little bit too high level for me, up in the clouds a little lofty, maybe not the type of person that was really going to get down into details because they're trying to schmooze me. And when I feel like I'm being schmoozed, I might feel like they're trying to pull the wool over my eyes, perhaps. Not to say that that's going to happen all the time. The other thing that might happen in an interview is that you might, as far as your formality is concerned, be a very informal person. And rules are just not that big of a deal. Not that you're going to break rules and try to get away with, whatever you can, but even given the perception that you may be a person that glosses over the rules and won't follow company process could really resonate in the wrong way if that person happened to be very high on the formality and was a big rule follower. And depending on the type of work that you're interviewing for, as you could imagine, you could have a detrimental, a detrimental effect in the way that you explain yourself by virtue of the clues that you give when you talk. So one of the things that's really, really important in an interview is to really get into that interview and do a lot of listening, which is not unlike of what you probably tell people when you're advising them on how to go into an interview. So that's the first thing I would say in an interview is to understand where your interviewer is coming from, and then understand how am I going to meet that person in the middle. So you almost want to take your personality traits that you get from your assessment, and you want to take the extremes of that graph. Your viewers haven't seen the graph, but you have these 4 different variables plotted out in the graph. You want to bring them more toward the middle, and you want to be what we call situational. So you want to be able to go to the left and go to the right, depending on what the situation is during the interviewing process, not to be phony or insincere, but to just be able to meet that person in the middle. Teddy, you had a question.
Yeah, Greg asked the question. I just want to reiterate what you're sharing is absolutely real. I live this every day. I interview every day. And when I'm trying to create business, I'm interviewing every day. I would wager you do as well, Noel. Every
Absolutely.
Day. And a good friend of mine who's a fun-loving guy introduced me to this lady. He said, oh my God, Teddy, she's going to love you. You guys will have an absolutely fantastic time together. So I took that perspective that he shared with me, and I went into a meeting, an opportunity meeting with her, and I was too much for her. She couldn't handle me. I mean, I was using the perspective my buddy said, who's a fun-loving, fun guy. He's sort of like Randy and I. We can cut up and do jokes. And I thought that was her style, and it wasn't. And I screwed up. So I get it. Hey, so in that context, Greg asked this question basically: how do you balance your honesty in the environment versus your true authenticity?
It's very, very simple, actually. I think sometimes we try to overanalyze and second guess the interview. And I think the most important thing about any type of interaction, whether it's on an interview or it's in a business meeting or any type of meeting or any type of interaction you have with another person, is to show your authenticity. We don't want to be we don't want to be false. We don't want to give the perception that we're not real. We want to be authentic, but we also want to make sure to understand that we have some extremes in our personality traits sometimes. And when we show those extremes, it may not be perceived to your advantage to show those in a way that gives your interviewer an unfair perception of who you are. Remember, perception is reality, and most of what you're saying is not based on what most of their perception is based on nonverbal communication. So the first thing that I do when I'm talking to a person for the first time is that, do they have a closed, posture, or are they open, affable, friendly, or are they close to the chest? If you notice that your interviewer is close to the chest, be very careful about how you communicate with that person.
Careful in that you don't get too jovial and too
careful in the sense that you don't conflict with that person's behavioral style and create a situation where you're going to be oil and water.
Right? And I guess, no, in that context, it's sort of like, if I'm the reserved, quiet, demeanor guy, which might be hard for most people to perceive, and the other person is this flamboyant jokester and loves to, laugh at what he's talking about, and I'm sitting there and I'm being overly quiet and not engaging with that person, at least, as you said earlier, trying to get to the middle, I may turn that person off that way as well.
Absolutely. It's a good example, Teddy. You gotta meet people in the middle. And the other thing that you can do is you can use your behavioral strengths truly as a strength. And so if you know that you're a highly analytical person and you are able to provide a proof of that by way of example during the interviewing process, by all means, highlight the strengths of who you are as an individual. That shows your authenticity. And then obviously you've done some homework. If you're an introverted person, you're not going to be going for a position that requires a very extroverted person. But you should definitely evaluate the person that you're having this interview with, as that person is interviewing, based on the types of questions and based on their body language and how they communicate. Do they communicate by showing their strengths? Remember, they're going to show their strengths too. So if they're talking about things that are extroverted in nature, they're going to be more extroverted. If they're talking about things of, hey, I like to be this is a project I was working on. It was a great project because I didn't have any interferences from anybody. That person's going to be very reserved. Yeah. So you have to be able to understand who you're talking to.
Oh, and Dean asked a question that, how do you tell body language in a Zoom environment? Hang on, Dean. In a few weeks, we're going to bring a body language expert to the conversation to help us with that. So
nice.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Hey, we're at the half-hour segment. Thank you. This has been Dean. Noel, I'm really enjoying this, and Dean, thanks for engaging, and Greg. Look, Randy and I have been doing this for a long time. We're really getting into it, and we're really excited to have Brookmead Holdings as our founding sponsor. Brookmead, since '93, has helped thousands of individuals in major industries across all areas of experience and responsibility in career fields, help them in their discover and achieve their ideal career goals. Brookmead does this work through customized job search, coaching, helping with professional development for individuals and organizations of all sizes. If you or someone could benefit from this kind of a conversation to help your employees or help yourself, then give them a call for a private conversation. 336-814-8910, 336-814-8910. Thank you for letting me do that, guys. And Brookmead, thank you for being a sponsor. Randy?
Absolutely. Well, look, we're with Noel Dibona. We're talking about decoding behaviors to help you do a better job of interviewing and everyday life, really, and who you interact with at work or at home. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the interviewing. And I tell you, one of the things I really like what you just mentioned earlier, Noel, and that is, it's one thing to theoretically say, well, you need to kind of assess the other guy and you got to think about your own this and that. And in the meantime, I'm sweating bullets because I'm in an interview. Are there certain key phrases? You mentioned a project where I didn't have, distractions, or are there certain cues that even a guy like me who may be oblivious to a lot of things can pick up on in real time during those interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So some of those things might include, for example, the interview is questioning and examples that they may provide around the position that you're interviewing for, in terms of if, for example, there is a lot of multitasking involved. So if that person says, hey, this is a hard-hitting environment, we get it done. You're thinking to yourself that this person has high expectations, and that would be something that if you have the type of, if you're low on the patience scale on your assessment, then you're going to be more inclined to be very positive and react positive to that type of an environment. If, on the other hand, you're very stable and very high in the patient index, which simply means that you don't like multitasking, that you like to start a project from beginning to end and follow the steps in between, you're going to be very ill-equipped or not in your natural style to deal with that multitasking environment. So that's one clue. The other clue that we talked about is rule following. Am I a rule follower or not? If the interview is talking about wanting to bend rules, you're thinking, oh, that person's informal. But I'm a rule follower, and he and I, or she and I, are not going to really mesh that well, because we're going to be kind of in conflict about how to interpret rules. Or, hey, I'm comfortable with that because that person is a big picture thinker. They're low on the formality index, just like me. And I like to look at the big picture. I'm not going to get caught up in the red tape of following all these rules exactly the way they should be. The other one we talked about earlier was extraversion. Does the person put some level of importance on interfacing with others or not? And then, of course, whether they're independent or collaborative. And this is interesting to me. So people that are highly, highly independent, that don't want to collaborate, but they're independent. And when they're very driving and low on the patience, the relationship between being independent and being very driving means that that person is going after it big time. And if you're somebody that's more collaborative and highly steady, you're diametrically opposed to that. You're being, hey, I'm going to go after this. I'm going to do my job, but I'm going to do it in my own time as I'm comfortable. And you need to kind of be thinking about that as you're fielding these questions. Now, it's a lot to think about, but if you do your assessment and if you study your assessment, you get to know who you are. You can immediately tell when somebody is going into an area that's not in your natural, strength or your natural style.
It'll make more sense too, I think. Again, sometimes I don't know about you, Teddy, but I deal with clients that say, wow, I thought that interview went great. I answered all of their questions. All of their questions. And so it's not just the words that you speak, it's the rest of the story.
Yeah. Well, what's that statistic that 70% of what people hear from you comes from your body language, not your words? Yeah. Right. Am I right with that number?
Yeah. Tone of voice and your body language. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll talk about that tomorrow. I've got a Fox 8 segment at 8:15, shameless plug, but we're going to talk about at 8:15 about personalities during the interview and what do employers look for and what are some tips that you can hopefully retain as you go through that interview process. Hey, I know let's if you've got a couple more points here, Noel, that you want to make. I know we're going to move into the Teddy and Randy assessments swamp here in just a few minutes, but anything else you want to throw in there before we make that turn?
Yeah, don't throw me in the swamp, dude.
No, it'll be fun, Teddy. It'll be fun.
You'll be gentle.
We'll be gentle. I would like to just mention something that we really didn't go over very much, but that is with people getting along with others that they work with that may be on their same team or on another team that they interface with quite a bit during the normal course of work. And one of the things that everybody can do is get more in tune with who they are through their assessment, and then begin to understand, hey, how does John or Jack or Jane, how does that person, I wonder what style they are. If I'm real extrovert and I talk to them, and you can start to put a picture together on people by just making note of your interactions with them, and recognize that your perception of them can be vastly improved once you figure out where they're coming from. Because instead of taking something personal that they may have said, they may just be responding to the type of person that you are versus the type of person that they are, and create and set up some natural tension between the two, that once you understand it from a behavioral standpoint, you now feel better about that person. And a person that you have perceived to be very difficult, not so easy to get along with, once you understand them a little bit better, you can understand why they said those things to you, which may be just indicative of their personality trait.
Yeah, and that reminds me, we took a DISC assessment here at Goodwill about a year ago. And then we had some group discussion that followed that. And again, I'm not going to name names and specific whether they're a D, I, S, or C, but I remember one comment that one of the folks in the room made, which was, people think, not me, but this person said this, that people think I'm distant because I'm not chatty in the morning. When I come into work, I just come in. If I say hello, that's it. And other people say, don't you like me? Don't you like me? Because this first person was not outwardly gregarious, was just not that talkative, more introverted, more focused business at work versus the chatty and the interactive kind of piece. And so those perceptions do become reality. But it was interesting that now that first person realizes, okay, my personality is what it is, and I need to be a little bit more chatty, if you will, so that others perceive me as being a little more friendly. They perceive
Absolutely.
that first person as being distant and just aloof.
Absolutely.
And they're really not, but that was how the perception was created. So very interesting stuff. Anything else you want to add on that, Noel, before we
The big takeaway for today is understanding your behavioral style and moving into the middle so as to not alienate others or give others an unfair perception of who you are as a person.
And Dean asked, how do we tell if someone's extrovert or introvert? And maybe you just talk on that quickly. And then he also says, is this all about being empathetic? Which I don't think that is correct, but no.
Yeah. So, okay. So as far as introverted versus extroverted, it's very simple. If you've got somebody that's happy being in their cubicle, doing their work without a lot of interruption, and somebody that doesn't naturally exchange conversation at the water cooler or the coffee pot, or now that we're all virtual, they're not, real chatty on the telephone when you're talking with them. Obviously, they're going to be more introverted. I mean, introverted and extroverted is not a scientific thing as much as it is just very, very much, we're all aware of extroversion and introversion, I think. And so if you're somebody that really likes to meet others and be very comfortable speaking in a social environment and, comfortable addressing a group that you may not know, that's a very extroverted person. And the good thing about the assessment is it actually brings out examples of these different behavioral traits. As far as being empathetic, actually, when you take all these behaviors from one person to the next and you shake them up in a bag and throw them out on the table, and you start evaluating a team and getting to see the dynamics of how those different personalities play with each other, one of the biggest things that we can do in trying to improve our relationships with everybody that we interface with on a daily basis is to be more empathetic and show empathy toward others. But that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but showing empathy is a very, very basic and important characteristic of high performing teams. And so I think, the person that asked that question or mentioned that is right on. It's a very, very important part of doing business and having positive relationships with one another.
All right. We have Yep.
Randy, Noel, we have 3,000 people on Facebook Live watching this. And there's a lady on there by the name of Alicia who says, "Oh my God, I wish I would have met Noel years ago before I got the job I'm in now." But go ahead, buddy.
Well, I was just going to kind of wrap things up and let's pivot. We've got Noel Dibona on here talking about decoding behaviors and how that can help us during interviews and in our everyday work life and in our personal lives. You're an expert in this in predictive index, and gosh, a month or two ago, I know I took that assessment, and I think Teddy did as well. So, the big reveal is about to happen.
Let me write these things down. I'm going to write them down, Noel, so I know what you guys will say I am.
Please, you're going to want to write these down.
Here we go. Turn up the volume. Here we go. So
I've got 2 sets of reports in front of me right here. Okay.
All right.
And I got to say, I'm very, very impressed at some of the strengths that you gentlemen have and how lucky all your people that work with you are, because
I ain't paying you, man.
You have some very, very positive attributes in your profile. But let me begin here with Teddy. I'm going to do a contrast and compare, and then I'm going to throw it off to one of you to maybe be able to say, "Hey, Noel, that resonates with me," or "I think you might be off base." But let's just see how it goes. And I'd like for you to have a little bit of a conversation with each other. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that, Teddy, you fall under the social profile. You are what we refer to as a collaborator. And as a result, you are highly, highly extroverted, and you focus on relationships.
How extroverted am I?
You are very, very extroverted. You are, to be quite exact, you're at the top 35%, 65 percentile of so you're very extroverted, which is a good thing. That's a good thing. And now, although there are many, many other things about your profile, Teddy, that we're going to continue to reveal, I want to stay high level and kind of do a contrast and compare between the two of you, because I think it's fascinating, and it's a good way of reinforcing the things that we discussed earlier on the call. So, Randy, you are a stabilizing profile. What does that stabilizing mean? You're very, very process oriented, detailed. You study, you like process, you like structure. So those things are very, very positive and important traits to have. Now, you can see that a stabilizing profile is more intent on data and process and things, and not as much on people, where you can see a social profile is very much oriented toward people. So the first thing that I'd like to do before we go on with the rest of this contrast and compare is to just ask Randy, does this resonate with you, Randy? Am I on or off base as far as you're concerned with your personality being just at a high level, a stabilizing profile, liking process?
Yeah, I think the stabilizing part is there. I've had people over the years say, you know, I don't get too high, I don't get too low. I've been through a number of interesting things over the last, let's say, 15 years that, and you know, I still keep on ticking. And so I like structure. I like authority. I like being the authority person. I also like people. Now, as an only child, so maybe that is part of the whole, gee, I can be by myself, and, you know, I have to be accountable in that sense. I can't push it off on somebody else because I'm it. But I do like people. I guess I'm also a ham, and I enjoy the communication skills and the writing and speaking and so forth. I do like people, but I got to tell you, I'm fine just hanging out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you,
just hanging out. Really
in your profile, you can be either task or people oriented. So you're situational. We talked about the midpoint. So you're in the middle. Teddy, on the other hand, is very people oriented. So Teddy, maybe from your standpoint, does this resonate with you? Being people oriented, you would be explained by being empathetic and persuasive, but very sociable. Does that speak to you?
It does. I like the whole idea of getting into conversations with people. No, the tagline for my business is that it all starts with a conversation.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That
So,
says a lot.
and you know, I'm not on this. I'm not. Randy and I didn't create this radio show or the show. I didn't join this show just to do something. I wanted people to see my lovely face every week. You know, I believe I'm very extroverted. I don't know about very, but yeah, I know I'm an extrovert. And
Yeah, you are definitely extroverted. The other thing that I think is really interesting, Teddy, is that you can be either very comfortable with risk or cautious with risk, and you're being situationally appropriate with risk. Now, somebody might say, "Hey, risk, that's not part of behavior." Well, actually, we're taking these four different measurements, and we're dividing, chopping, and slicing them up, and we're coming up with things that would not necessarily be associated with behavior, but risk is. On the other hand, Randy, when you're talking about risk, you're not going to be very comfortable with risk. You're going to be very cautious with risk. So if the apparent outcome, if there's a probability that the outcome is going to be negative, you're going to steer away from that. Does that speak to you, Randy?
I think it does now that I've had to tuck my tail between my legs a few times in life. When I did kind of go for it, I don't regret that necessarily, but I think, you know, you put your hand on the stove once or twice too many times, and then you begin to think maybe I'll not do that. And I think as you get older too, you know, that, you know, you may not be as risky as maybe, hey, you're young, you know, you can screw up again and again and again, and you still have a life to live.
Right. No, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. So let's continue on with this and go through a few other things that are really important. So Teddy, as we said, you're very sociable and you're high on that scale. Now, one of the things that you think about is that your self-concept of how you think you should behave in a business setting is to still be sociable, but you're very cognizant about reining that in toward the middle a little bit, away from the other extreme. And because I think that you feel that you don't want to turn anybody off with that, that you want to get more in the middle, although you're still sociable and all. You're aware of that. Does that resonate with you, Teddy?
It does. Remember the story I told about the guy said, you know, it's fun loving, whatever. And I went into a conversation.
Yeah.
And I knew halfway into that conversation that I was giving her too much of Teddy at once. I knew that I wasn't coming to the middle. And it was too late for me to back up. And so I'm with you. I absolutely. I love to have fun and play and laugh, but get serious when it's time to get serious. And I'm also try to be very cognizant of the people I'm working with. To what degree are they willing to accept that, or when do I need to leave it the trunk of the car?
That's good. That's good. That makes sense. And now, Randy, I'm looking at your graphs right now, and so this is interesting. You're a very collaborative person, which means that you want to involve others, and yet you are driving yourself to be a little bit more independent in your work environment. And you are also a very, very steady person, but you're also driving yourself and you're creating a situation where you want to project yourself to be a little bit more driving. So not by a lot, not that you're trying to be somebody that you're not, but you can see how the realities of the business environment and your awareness of who you are require you, or you feel that you need to moderate those behaviors just a little bit. Maybe does that resonate with you or make sense?
Yeah, you kind of lost me partway through that. I was I was trying to keep up with you. I'm not that smart, but you know.
Well, let me break it down. Let me break it down a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll break it down. So
I was a liberal arts major, so you know I'm a media major. So you could give it to me in short words, right? Short sentences.
You're a very steady person, very precise, and yet you feel that in your business environment, you have to be a little bit less steady and a little bit more driving to get things done. Does that resonate with you?
I suppose so. I mean, they hired me to start a program, the first of its kind in the world for Goodwill anywhere.
Nice.
And so then there's expectations and deliverables that go with that. And I know how to do my job. And I think part of coming to Goodwill for me and personally was realizing that no longer am I self-employed, but I'm part of a larger organization and not just accountable to me, myself, and I, but also to others, and not just my boss, but other internal customers and so forth. And so I think a greater awareness that, it's a big team here and we're all trying to do the right thing. We all have different strengths. And if I sound like Miss America right now with what I'm saying, that's kind of the deal is,
Yeah.
we've got a good gig going here. We really, really do. And, but again, I've got a big ego. And I think most professionals, if they're honest about it, if they know they're good at what they do and they're confident and comfortable and they've had a track record of doing good work, you carry that in you, that inner confidence, but then you don't want to be a pompous jerk about it. And so that's a balance I think that we all have to face when we're working within a team. And so we've got to be focused, collaborative, and not overwhelm.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's kind of again, it's a long-winded response, I suppose, but it's the truth. It really is. I love what I do and I'm good at it. And I realize that, but by the same token, I don't need to, pound somebody over the head with it.
Right.
We get good results. I mean, you and I have interacted for over a year now, and we've gotten to know each other a bit, and also a referral or two of yours. So we do good work here. Interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. You do. Absolutely. And it is very interesting. And I think what you've explained is that you have a very dynamic environment and you recognize that, and yet your group is very successful, but you have the desire to want to learn more about yourself and apply that to the workplace. You have that type of
ideally, yeah.
Yeah, you have the mettle to be able to see through that. And some people are intimidated by that, where they don't want to know their true self. So Teddy and Randy, there's one thing that I want to tell you that I think is a very good striking difference between your two personality traits. Teddy is very situational when it comes to being subjective or objective. So he's going to be subjective with maybe the things that aren't so important, and then objective with the things that are more important, perhaps. Now, Randy, you are a highly, highly, highly objective person, which means, and probably to your success, that you are going to carefully make decisions and evaluate the situation based on data. You're a data-driven person, and so very objective. And does that speak to both you, Teddy and Randy? Do you guys see that?
I get it. I do. It does. It is a good characteristic of me, or reality of me. And by the way, Inez threw out that on Facebook that Randy and I complement each other. And so
absolutely.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes left here, and Teddy, we may need to kind of do away with our a longer version story kind of stuff, but I do want to get to how Teddy and I can play better with each other, or how we can play off each other's strengths or complement each other.
Absolutely. So to that point, let's go down into some more details here and kind of see some things that you will both need to be aware of that will be helpful to you. And that would be that on Teddy's side, and then we'll talk a little bit about Randy. And I want you guys to kind of contrast and compare this with yourselves. But let's talk about the patient's stride, the need for stability. So Teddy does not like change very much. And actually, Randy doesn't like change very much. So maybe you guys can talk about the fact that in your own businesses and how you perceive change, Do you feel that that's an accurate representation of your characteristics?
Randy, as I think.
I'm a tried and true. This is how we've done it. You know, I'm the Times New Roman of fonts. Okay.
Yeah.
Even I've come around to something a little more contemporary, but yeah, I think tried and true works. But I'll tell you what, a good example is our show. This thing, nobody told us to do this. I got Teddy on the phone. I got him out of bed at noon one day, and I said, "Hey, Teddy, why don't we put our heads together, have a little fun here?" And you know, who knows where it'll go. So there's that adventure. But again, there was no risk involved financially. There was no, if this fails, my career's dead in the water. There was nothing like that. This was having fun. And I love having fun. And life is short, you know, and you got to love what you do. Right?
Absolutely.
So with people that you get along with and admire and respect, it's even better. It really is.
Absolutely. Let's look at some of the strengths under the need to conform for Teddy here. Flexible approach to situations and people, who likes to be flexible that way, delegates easily, adapts to organization, and deals well with ambiguity. And lo and behold, on Randy's side, strong discipline and execution, build structure and respect for the plan, and focuses on how to get things done right. So I think that you guys have kind of the best of both worlds covered between the two of you. Maybe you could comment a little bit, Teddy, about your strengths in that regard and how it relates to your interaction with Randy.
So I think I got it. I mean, I'll never forget years ago, my mother-in-law used to cut my hair, and she cut her son's hair as well. And she wanted to cut my hair the same way she cut her son's hair. And he worked on Capitol Hill. So he was a, suit and tie and, kind of a guy. And I'm not. I said, Mom, I don't want to conform to society.
Right.
And so, and I don't want to conform to, I understand rules. I understand the mustard and the mayonnaise, stay between the lines. But I also understand that you've got to push that line a little bit every now and then to see if you can get a little bit better result, create a little bit better opportunity.
So Randy has that structure, and I think you're straight on. That's exactly what your strengths are showing here. And then Randy, on the other hand, his strengths is that he likes to focus on how to get things done right and building structure and respect for the plan. So how do you guys do that with each other? How do you, if you come to a happy medium, or how do you work with those differences between the two of you?
Can I say publicly, I tell Randy what to do and he says, okay?
I'm good with that.
No, when we bounce off ideas, I want red and he says I like blue, and it never really. The interesting thing about this engagement with Randy, and I've known Randy for 20 some odd years, but this engagement is we just throw out ideas, and when both of us go, yeah, then that's where we go. Randy?
Yeah. I've not had any once that I can think of where I said, Teddy, that idea sucks, or we need to do something different. Here again, nobody's career goes down the tubes if this thing doesn't work. This is fun and play, and we can use our knowledge, our skills, and the talents to get it done. We've got just a moment or two left. Any final thoughts, Noel, that you have? Just to wrap things up.
I think we covered everything in a lot of detail, and
Noel, could you summarize the purpose of using this assessment for ourselves in the context of a job seeker? Why would they want to do that for themselves?
Absolutely. The reason a job seeker would want to do this for themselves is to become more in tune with their strengths and their blind spots, so that when they respond to prospective employers with how they sell themselves, they'll be able to do so with more knowledge and interact with others in a more positive way.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Now, in wrapping things up, we want to talk about our next week's show.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get it in front of me, Randy.
I've got it. Mike
Brock. Show people how you do this. Creature of habit.
Remember, I'm the Times New Roman of, I wrote it down right here. Now, I could look at it as Mr. Computer Head over there. He's got his other monitor and he's got it all fancy. But I use my gel pen, not a fountain pen, but a gel pen. But yeah, Mike Brock, he's a career sales guy. Been around the block. He has worked for several big companies. This guy knows sales like the back of his hand. And he's been a job hunter like so many of us at different points. And I got talking to Mike, I don't know, a month or two ago. And so, you know, we were talking about his career and all. And I made the comment that about our show and said, one of us said, you know, sales is a lot like the job hunt. And when you think about it, it really is uncovering needs, listening, communicating, body language, problem solving, all of those things. So Mike's going to be on next week to talk about the parallels between sales and the job hunt. And I can't tell you how many times I have people tell me, I hate sales. I hate salesmen. I don't want to be sold. All of those things. And yet in the job hunt, you've got to market yourself. And when the game is on, the interview is on, you got to sell yourself. You got to tell them why you and not the next guy. And so there's a lot that goes on that kind of parallels each other. We're going to talk about that next week. So if you've got questions, you want to join in with that, Mike Brock will be joining us next Wednesday. What is that? The 21st? Yep.
Yes, sir.
I think we're done. Teddy, anything else? Famous last words? No.
Thank you, Brook Meat Holdings, for sponsors. Yep. Noel, dude, thanks a lot for coming in.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I loved it. Thank you, guys.
You know, share with the world who Teddy and Randy are a little deeper.
I will.
On here, thank you for coming. We'll see you all next week.
Have a good week.
Take care. Thank you.